all started in Buncombe County. They felt like promoting Asheville, the Biltmore Estate, the Biltmore, the Grove Park Inn, and other identities. If the city could raise funds to help market it through television, media ads, it would help stimulate, because their season is so short-lived, it's only during the summer. So the room tax was a very plausible and effective measure to promote Asheville.
I had the opportunity at that time to serve as chair of the Durham Board of County Commissioners, and I had spoken with the then publisher of the Herald Sun, Rick Casper, talked with Whip Gully, and found there was a need to try to get more involved in letting people know who Durham was, and more importantly, for visitors that wanted to come here or who were already here to find out more about the city.
The memory always softens and sweetens what really happened. I don't recall a significant amount of opposition to setting this thing up. I do know that the hotel and motel folks who essentially saw their customers as paying the tab were concerned about it, and they had to be a part of the conversation that we were having, and they were. There was reassurance that a significant amount of the funds would go back to drive business that they would benefit from.
Well, it's like everything else in the infancy, you know, we have expectations, but you just don't know where it leads you. We did find out very quickly that there wasn't enough funding to staff the Bureau appropriately, and Senator Royal, a couple of years later, and George Miller helped add another 2% to the room tax, with a 100% earmark for marketing and Convention Bureau solicitation and things of that type.
The struggles around creating the CVB dealt less with heavy opposition, more with, this is a new thing, a somewhat strange thing, none of us know anything about it, there's no CVBs around us or track records, so what is this thing, do we want to do it? And two is, how do we divvy up the money, because city and county governments starve for money, perennially underfunded to do what they're supposed to do, and so there was a allocation of the funds that was worked out. So those, getting folks comfortable with the new idea and figuring out how to allocate the money, were the key struggles around getting the CVB established.
We gave lots of credit to Whip Gully and Bill Bell. Whip was the mayor, and Bill was chair of the county commission. And somehow it was decided that they should ask the General Assembly if we could have a Convention and Visitors Bureau in Durham. So we got a charter and figured out how it was going to be paid for with occupancy tax. The charter required a board to be set up. So we had to learn what we were about, and then we had to find a director. And we set out an RFP and started that process, requiring that the prime thing that we needed was someone with startup experience with a Convention and Visitors Bureau. Reyn just stood out. We called him, he lived in California at the time. We went back and said, we found the one, and some of the other teams had people they thought might be good too. We ended up bringing 3 in here to Durham to be interviewed face to face, and Reyn won.
I'm coming down to Carolina, the Bull City's where I want to stay.
As we started the Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau, there were several things we had to do simultaneously. It was a new organization to the community. The idea of visitor-centric economic development was new. The whole idea of marketing a community and branding it and understanding its traits was new. So we really had to start from scratch, and to build understanding and capacity locally within Durham. We also had to build it with people who worked here or owned businesses here who weren't living in Durham and didn't understand Durham. So there were lots of challenges.
It was a very intense environment getting things done. I can remember Reyn always saying, you know, we have to jumpstart this project. We have to get this done now because we're already years behind X, Y, and Z, because Durham did not have Visitors Bureau, Convention and Visitors Bureau. So we had to, it was always a sense of urgency, as though we were already behind, so let's get it moving. And
the meetings in this staff room would be really intense. And Reyn is just an intense guy, and once he focuses in, he's focused, and has to think about it. And we would leave the doors and go into our offices to start working. And it dawned on me, I said, you know what? We're in this building, completely stressed to hell, trying to accomplish something. And visitors are pulling up on the outside with big smiles, and they're happy to be here. And we're on the inside like saying, can you just leave? Because I'm trying to get the visitor's guide done. So if you could just get out of my way, go visit somewhere else. Could you just go find a tobacco leaf or something? So it was kind of funny trying to balance watching those people be happy, visitors, which you wanted, and us being completely stressed trying to make sure we kept them happy.
We were always on the cutting edge of technology. Sometimes I'd call it the bleeding edge of technology. I remember thinking to myself when I started there in the early 90s, Reyn talked about a paperless office. I said, you're kidding me. What is a paperless office? Can you imagine in 1990? But we were faxing through our computers. You know, we didn't do the inter-office memo thing with an envelope. We would send information through email. We were already doing that in 1990. As I look back at that, I thought, wow, we really were cutting edge in technology. We were jump-starting that, and we had the tools that we needed to get it done.
The fact is, we didn't really have expectations because we didn't know what we were doing. We really did not know what we were doing. But he was a great teacher, and he knew what he was doing. I can remember he told us in one of those early meetings that he was going to eventually have 25 people working there. And we all looked at each other like, doing what?
Reyn knew what we were supposed to do, because to be honest, the whole Convention and Visitors Bureau concept was basically new to the Southeast. I mean, Charlotte was basically just getting rolling. Raleigh and Dave Heinel had only been in it for, you know, not too long before Reyn had started. So we were all basically just standing around saying, okay, what do I do here? How do we do this? Because you've seen the movie and we haven't. So you got to tell us what to do. So yeah, there was a lot of you know, making phone calls or making connections for the most part, or fostering relationships with meeting planners all over the place.
Two things that told me about Durham within the first week is one, that I went to Stone Brothers and Bird and tried to buy something, and George Davis said he would just bill me at the end of the month. He set up a charge account. He didn't take credit cards, but he trusted me, which I thought was pretty amazing. I'd only been in town a week. I went to get some business cards, and the guy on Main Street told me that he wasn't going to print something that said President of the Durham Convention and Visitors Bureau unless I had some sort of proof that that's who I was. So I had to go get a note from the chairman of the board, who was H.C. Cranford at the time, that said, yes, he's the real deal. But it told me that there at once was an unpretentious trust here, but also a guarded sense of community, that it was important to them.
I can't wait until I get there. There's so much I want to do.
When I came into office, I think it's fair to say that Durham was widely perceived as the poor stepchild of the Triangle. There was the lovely, sparkling capital city of Raleigh. There was that amazingly cool, wonderful University of North Carolina-based Chapel Hill community, and Durham was blue collar and working class and kind of dirty, and that's where bad things happened and stuff like that. And it was a tough, in 1984 and 5, when I came into office in 6 and so, there was a tough image challenge. And that's, I think, another reason that the CVB played a key role. Durham has transformed itself, but to have someone helping you understand that and then communicating that is crucial, and CVB's played that role.
You can lose your story because other people take it over. We had to reconnect the story of RTP with its Durham roots, for example. Those had been kind of lost, maybe not on purpose, but they'd been lost. We had to reconnect other parts of Durham to its story. We had to go back and help people understand that our past is our past and it's part of us. So we had to reclaim the old brands, the legacy brands we call them. Bull City, you know, we're fairly comfortable using Bull City right now, but when I first got here, it was anathema. So I had to explain that, no, our tobacco past, our Civil War past, all of those things are part of your personality today. And I think they thrived. And when we said that, it didn't take long. The difficult part was helping the news media and nearby communities realize that we weren't going to give up our assets that easily anymore. Sometimes you have to kind of step on a toe in order to get something turned around.
Some of the most fun parts were coming up with all the bull words we could come up with. You know, staff meetings were brainstorming bull words, you know, and we would come up with the bullhorn for the visitor center and notables for part of the newsletter, mentions of folks we were associated with in the community.
The Raleigh Chamber of Commerce held its annual dinner banquet and held it in Durham, but never said it was in Durham, just held it here. So we went out and put flyers on all their windows that night so that when they came out, it said just thank you for meeting in Durham and we hope you come back again soon. That met with incredible outrage, I didn't realize, by the head of the chamber then. Ironically, the head of the chamber now has been one of Durham's best allies to work with.
Whenever we would fly somewhere and they'd say, welcome to Raleigh, we made sure, we were told to, and we're told to make sure that everybody that said that to us at RDU, or the weather here in Raleigh today is such and such, you know, as we were getting ready to land, be sure to tell them as you exit that this is Raleigh-Durham, to make sure that Durham is in there.
Actually, the person who would call and get after me to stay on the airport issue was Dr. John Hope Franklin. And when I learned who he was, that gave me inspiration that, yeah, I could wade in there and deal with it if it was important to somebody as prominent as he was.
Something we've heard over the last 25 years was the confusion about who Durham was and is. And their education about Durham had often been on the Weather Channel or on an airport landing, you know, with the whole Raleigh-Durham International Airport confusion. So obviously those first few years were big time focused on separating us into Durham, North Carolina, and that we loved our friends in Raleigh and worked closely with them, but we were not them.
Reyn did surveys. He proved to us that we did definitely have an image problem.
But DCVB was critical in helping us to understand what the research really meant and how we could take that information and move all of the culture organizations forward, move all of the audiences to shift around. I mean, we did things like interview families who had children in classes at the Arts Council because we wanted to know what else they participated in. And so it was a momentous time in the cultural community, and it was a great project with great results because it unveiled for us what some of us knew, some of us didn't know, some of us didn't accept, that in fact people who participated in an exhibit because they liked the visual arts or contemporary arts also were people who might be really interested in going to historic Stagville, and they were doing that already. So it was a great project, and we couldn't have done it without the research knowledge of DCVB at that time to really make a difference.
I thought we played a very important role because Durham is the only place in North Carolina, as far as a community or a county, that has 3 state historic sites. So we have Duke Homestead, Bennett Place, and Stagville, and all 3 sites attract a lot of visitors, not just from the Durham community, but from around the state and out of state, and international visitors as well. So I think it was very important to work with the Bureau to collaborate and help communicate that story. And Durham has such a rich history. Many local people are aware of that, but many people outside of Durham are not aware of the diversity of our history. The Bureau played a very important part in sharing that story and promoting that to the public.
What was most appealing to me when I interviewed was the sense of place. The community it still had its sense of place. It had not become one of those places that go shopping for culture one day and then come back with one of everything. Instead, it had built from within itself indigenous festivals that were nationally known but indigenous. Indigenous visitor features, nationally known but indigenous. And that's something you can't recreate once a community is lost. So I saw that as really incredible potential.
Part of the biggest job we had, I believe, is not just educating everyone else outside of Durham. It was educating ourselves. So we were very intentional about doing that. And I know Ann and I brainstormed with Reyn at one point, and we set up, I think it was bi-weekly at the time, staff lunches where we would all bring a brown bag and we would go out into the community, I think on a Wednesday midday, and we would pick a new spot every couple of weeks. And I was busy and involved in doing familiarization tours for travel writers and visitors, potential visitors to the area. So we did internal FAM tours with our staff, and that was a lot of fun. It brought the learning inside. It took everything up a notch.
Looking back 20 years later, I can tell you, I can imagine that Reyn probably had a lot to prove to a city that really had no idea if this would work in the first place. And so obviously there was a lot of stress on his side. And of course it kind of flows downhill. And that would have been one of the reasons that I think he was so driven earlier on. And I can't think of a better word, but the man was absolutely driven to make a difference. And I don't think he was making a difference for just so he could put the light on himself and say, look what I did. But look what's possible.
You like ribs and barbecue, fettuccine or haute cuisine?
So if I had to boil down what DCVB does into the very simplest terms, I mean, we attract and we serve visitors. But really our main purpose is to get Durham on the brain, so that as people are thinking about where to go for a weekend getaway, where to go for a vacation, for a place to hold their meeting and convention, we want Durham to come up in that short list of consideration. And that's what marketing is all about. It is about getting your name on the list. So one of the things that we do is we invite groups to come to Durham to meet. Now, some of those are conventions, some of them are just meeting groups, they might be training groups, they could be sports, they could be films, but people that are coming in groups. Probably the best money that we spent is getting Durham's name in the New York Times, getting Durham in Southern Living as the tastiest town in the South, but getting somebody else to talk about Durham is part of what we do as earned media. Of course, whenever a visitor comes to Durham, they need information. Some of that information is on their phone, it's on their mobile device, but a lot of times people want to hold something in their hand that has all of the information that they're looking for. And we have a very, very talented staff that works to create all of these publications. We create visitor guides, we create maps, we create things that people can hold, and it basically tells them where they're going to spend their money while they're here in Durham.
The destination marketing organization sphere is very, very competitive. And Durham is competing both nationally and internationally for visitors that our competitors have this advantage because they have significant more funding to go after these same visitors. So it behooves us to go ahead and bring Durham to the same level as our competitors so that we can compete effectively and bring even more visitors to Durham. I think the DCVB does a phenomenal job of marketing with the limited resources that we have. imagine what we could do if we double that.
I personally would like to see them step up the pace, talk more about Durham, get the word out in any fashion that they can, because I think that because of the attractions that we have here, the quality of life and improvements, that story needs to be told. And I think the Convention Visitors Bureau is an excellent vehicle for telling that story.
Looking back after 25 years, I would say we've been very fortunate. I would say we've had a CVB that has not just done a pretty good job, it's been recognized in this country and internationally as being one of the real leading institutions of its kind. And it's one recognition for that, but what I think is the community also has come to appreciate that in a real special way.
I feel proud of what the organization's doing. The people there know how to tell the Durham story. The governing board has a sense of continuity with the past and the future, and that's all you could ask for. A great organization is never reliant on an individual.
Moving forward, DCVB will stay focused on attracting even more visitors to Durham. As caretakers of Durham's image and brand, we will protect its unique sense of place while celebrating its distinctiveness. And we'll use our expert knowledge to recommend experiences that are real, fun, and worth sharing. You know, your pride in Durham inspires and motivates us, and we will continue to pour our heart, soul, and energy into telling the Durham story.
I can't wait until I get there. There's so much I'm gonna do. No, I can't wait until I get there.